We all like to believe that communication is mostly about words. We say what we want, we express how we feel, and the world responds accordingly. But in reality, a huge part of human behavior works very differently. Often, people don't say what they really want. Instead, they express their intentions through actions, hesitation, tone, timing, or small decisions that seem innocent on the surface. It's a kind of indirect communication, and once you start to notice it, you'll see it everywhere. Think about a friend who keeps suggesting, maybe we should hang out sometime, but never sets a date. Or a coworker who keeps asking questions that sound neutral, yet somehow make you feel evaluated. Or a partner who insists they're fine, while everything about their behavior says otherwise. None of these examples involve direct statements, yet they all reveal something meaningful. Today we're going to explore why humans behave indirectly, what hidden functions this serves, and how these silent signals shape our relationships, workplaces, and daily interactions. At first glance, speaking directly seems like the simplest and most efficient way to communicate. If you want something, just ask for it. If something bothers you, just say it. But humans rarely operate this way because social life is not built on efficiency. It's built on risk management. Direct expressions always involve risk. If you reveal what you want too clearly, you also expose yourself to rejection, judgment, or conflict. Imagine telling someone, "I want more attention from you," or "I need you to respect my work more." These statements are emotionally expensive. The more personal the desire, the more vulnerable you become. So instead of stating desires outright, people often express them indirectly through behaviors that invite others to make the first move. For example, a person who wants affection may not say, "Please hug me," but instead lingers longer when saying goodbye, lowers their voice, or positions their body closer. The behavior communicates the desire while keeping the request deniable. This phenomenon appears everywhere. In social settings, people test interest before committing. Someone might joke about something serious just to observe your reaction without having to fully own it. In families, children rarely ask for emotional reassurance directly. Instead, they might become clingy, disruptive, or unusually quiet, behaviors that signal a need without having to articulate it. In workplaces, employees hint at dissatisfaction through passive delays, reduced enthusiasm, or forgetting responsibilities rather than confronting a supervisor directly. In each situation, indirect behavior serves as a protective buffer. If the response is not favorable, the person can retreat. "Oh, I was just joking," or "I didn't mean anything by it," or "I'm just tired." This allows them to save face, maintain dignity, and avoid escalating conflict. There is also a strategic function. Indirect communication keeps relationships flexible. Once you state something directly, your stance becomes fixed, and others can hold you accountable. Indirect behavior preserves ambiguity, and ambiguity is useful. It allows people to negotiate power, desire, and expectations without declaring a definitive position. This is why many cultures, especially collectivist ones, value indirect expression as a sign of social intelligence. Being too direct may be seen as rude, inexperienced, or lacking awareness of how social dynamics work. Even in highly individualistic cultures, indirect signals remain dominant in emotional and intimate contexts because vulnerability doesn't disappear just because a person grew up in a speak your mind society. Indirect behavior isn't just a flaw or a lack of courage. It's a deeply human adaptation for navigating complex social worlds. When people can't express desires directly, they often use what can be called the backdoor strategy. Instead of entering through the front, stating what they want clearly, they enter sideways, through actions, tone, or timing that gently push others toward the outcome they prefer. At first glance, this might seem manipulative, but it's not always malicious. Most of the time, people use indirect strategies because they genuinely don't know how to ask for what they want without risking something important: affection, pride, belonging, or status. Consider a workplace scenario. A junior employee wants more recognition, but instead of saying, "I want credit for my work," they start taking on more visible tasks, volunteering to present updates, or strategically mentioning contributions in meetings. They're positioning themselves, not demanding. If it works, they gain visibility. If it doesn't, they can still say, "Oh, I just wanted to help." The back door gives them an exit route. In relationships, this phenomenon becomes even more interesting. People rarely say, "I want to feel important to you." Instead, they create situations where the other person must show care. For example, someone might act distant to provoke concern, or exaggerate how busy they are to trigger pursuit. The behavior creates a need for the other person to close the gap. Children are especially honest, indirect communicators. If a child feels ignored, they may not say, "I need attention." They might make noise, interrupt conversations, or even misbehave. These behaviors are not random. They're strategic, even if the child doesn't consciously plan them. They produce a result. Someone pays attention. The backdoor strategy also has a logical psychological advantage: deniability. If the other person reacts negatively, the individual can retreat without losing face. This protects self-esteem and preserves social harmony. Sometimes a sentence, "I didn't mean anything by it," is less about truth and more about safety. One of the most fascinating versions of the backdoor strategy appears when people want control without appearing controlling. For example, a partner who wants to decide where to go for dinner might avoid saying, "Let's go to my favorite place." Instead, they start listing the drawbacks of other options. "The parking there is terrible," or "Last time the service was slow," or "I don't know, the vibe just isn't right." In the end, the other person arrives at the suggestion the first person wanted from the beginning. The outcome aligns with their desire, but they never had to state the desire. We may laugh at these examples because they feel familiar, and they should. These patterns are everywhere. They're not signs of weakness. They're signs that humans are social animals who understand that expressing desire is never just about getting what we want. It's about managing the social consequences of wanting. For all its sophistication, indirect communication has a major weakness. It depends on interpretation. If the other person doesn't notice, doesn't care, or interprets incorrectly, the entire strategy collapses. Picture a scenario where someone hints repeatedly about wanting help, but the other person genuinely believes they're being independent. The first person feels ignored. The second person feels confused. Both walk away believing the other failed them. No words were spoken, yet disappointment builds. In relationships, this failure becomes dramatic. A partner may assume that their hints are obvious. If you cared, you'd notice. But observation is not universal. One person may express needs through silence, while the other interprets silence as peace. The mismatch turns subtlety into suffering. Workplaces are no better. An employee may believe they're signaling burnout by taking longer breaks or performing more slowly, while the manager interprets it as laziness. Meanwhile, the employee expects the manager to check in, and the manager expects the employee to speak up. Both are using different communication systems without realizing it. Indirect behavior also fails across cultural boundaries. In some cultures, indirectness is considered respectful, In others, it's considered evasive. A direct communicator may ask, "What do you want?" while the indirect communicator thinks, "If you cared, you'd already know." Neither is wrong. They just grew up with different rules. Even within the same culture, gender and upbringing shape interpretation. Some people are taught from childhood that asking directly is rude or selfish. Others are taught that indirectness is manipulative or immature. When these worlds collide, communication breakdown feels personal, even though it's systemic. There's also the issue of cognitive load. Indirect behavior assumes the receiver has enough bandwidth to notice signals. But modern life is noisy. When someone hints at their needs during a moment when the other person is stressed, distracted, or overwhelmed, the signal gets lost. Not because the person doesn't care, but because subtlety requires attention, and attention is limited. The tragedy of indirect communication is that it can create resentment toward people who never even knew they were part of a negotiation. It builds expectations without agreements and assigns responsibilities without consent. In its worst form, it becomes a loop. If I have to ask, it doesn't count. Or, if you didn't notice, you don't care. These beliefs destroy relationships that could have survived with one honest sentence. Yet even with these failures, indirect behavior persists because vulnerability doesn't disappear just because directness would work better. The system may be fragile, but it's deeply human. Once you start paying attention, indirect behavior becomes impossible to unsee. People rarely announce their desires, fears, or strategies. They demonstrate them. They test the waters. They leave clues. They hope someone will interpret correctly. Understanding this doesn't just make you better at reading others. It makes you better at understanding yourself. Before asking why someone didn't notice what you needed, it's worth asking whether you made it possible for them to notice. Before assuming someone didn't care, consider whether your signals were audible or ambiguous. Indirect communication isn't going away. It's built into intimacy, into power, into social survival. The goal isn't to eliminate it, but to recognize it, to see the negotiations beneath the surface. Because once you can see the pattern, interactions stop feeling mysterious, people stop seeming irrational, and relationships become easier to navigate. Sometimes the most honest things people say are the things they never say aloud.